I've started to do notes, which I don't really do, but it helps. This editorial, or interlude as I've written about it, is going with my video on my Halloween headstone display, which is out in the front yard, plus costume fitting, which I always try to do every now and then. Now, Halloween in Australia has been growing steadily over the last 10 years or so. The biggest opposition to it for the longest time was the perception that Halloween is a purely American celebration, which it isn't. If you do a quick search on the internet, look up Wikipedia or whatever, it'll tell you what the origins of Halloween are. Yes, it's been overtaken by the Americans. No one denies that. But it was a Celtic tradition called Samhain. Spelt Samhain for some reason, but that's because it's a Celtic word. It predates Christianity, but it's not purely an American festival. You have to remember, here in Australia, we were a convict colony, and the convicts that they sent out here from England were not the English by and large. They were our overlords. The convicts were Welsh, Scottish, Irish. They're all Celtic. They all had the traditions of Halloween, and they still do them in Britain. Maybe not so much in the English side of it, but yeah. So when convicts came out to Australia, like as happens, certain parts of their culture were downplayed, and one of them was Halloween. But right from the start, it was here, just not openly celebrated the way it is now. Funny thing that I do find about it is that for the longest time, the rejection of Halloween was over it being a purely American festival, and people would happily yell at you and have a shot at you if you were supporting it. And even if you had kids with you and you were doing trick-and-treating, they would happily tell you that you're being an idiot. It's an American thing. This is Australia, and we don't do that here. This is Australia, and we're Australian, and we're proud of it. The joke was that usually these people would march back to their car, which was some massive American gas guzzler, famous one, Ford F-250 four-wheel drive, big car for a certain type of person. Also, you would have the wannabe bikie who would be sitting on his Harley Davidson saying, bloody hell, you can't do that, that's not Australian. Well, yeah, those people are not dying out, but they're not as vocal as they once were. What I find really disturbing lately is being replaced by overtly Christian beliefs. And again, from personal experience, I told you about this recently on one of my Halloween search videos. A lady walked into a shop and abused the staff for having a shop full of Halloween articles on display, and they were all satanical and they should be taken down. You know, that sort of thing. The shop was 2/3 full of Christmas decorations. There was one aisle, basically, which had Halloween items, and the rest of it was Christmas. And this is late September. Yeah, so I never had other people say the same thing. Oh, it's it's all about the devil and the devil, and it's not. Again, a quick search in any number of places will tell you what the basis of Halloween is and its connections that aren't there to Christian devils. Why I find Halloween interesting is because it falls in line with my love of pop culture and costume making. I like making displays. They're not great by American standards, but I'm happy with what I do. Also, too, my son had an American girlfriend who came out to live in Australia. So I thought, oh, wouldn't you make her feel at home? And she loved it. She loved the Halloween experience because she wasn't back home in the States. Yeah, and so I have an interest in horror movies, and nothing brings out horror better than Halloween. And they're harmless movies. People who say that they're satanic worshipping and blah, blah, blah. That's just not on. Another thing too is people don't realise that Halloween is a season. It runs probably from late September to early November, with October 31st being Halloween, which is what everyone thinks Halloween is. But it's a whole season. So, it's not unusual to see people putting up their decorations first week of October, and they're down second week of November, and then the Christmas decorations come up. I mean, this whole business with the Christmas decorations coming out in September, I mean, and not just in a small way too, we're talking row after row after row of Christmas decorations, not anything else. Tried to do this, and others have tried to do it with limited success, I might add. Halloween is based around a season. And in the Northern Hemisphere, that is the coming of winter, the long dark. And that's why they have their bonfires and they get everything together and they have their celebrations. Well, this was with Samhain, but it was celebrating the end of the harvest. Down here in Australia, October 31st is spring, where, as I've said later on, the weather is bipolar. Mostly it rains, and like today, it's warm, but there's a cold breeze and there's very light rain every 20-30 minutes. That's just the way it is. So down here in Australia, we really should look at celebrating Halloween in a seasonally appropriate month, and that would be roughly April, May, probably with Halloween being May 1st, something like that, because that is when our winter begins. So remember, we were a convict colony. All our traditions came down from the Northern Hemisphere. The traditions of the indigenous people were just overlooked or wiped out. But we celebrate things in the wrong season. Again, Halloween in the Northern Hemisphere is in October, which is the beginning of their winter, or the colder months, the coming of the dark. Whereas down here, that's April, May. So it's something to look into, and maybe it'll pick up, but it's like Christmas in July. We do that down here, but a lot of people are against that, though it's a better time. lot of you who know me will know that I am very much into horror. I'm very much into Edgar Allan Poe. Love Vincent Price. I love the Welcome to My Nightmare special he and Alice Cooper did many, many years before Michael Jackson decided to have Vincent Price in a music video. Alice's gets overlooked for some reason. But one of my favourite poems, of course, like many people, is The Raven. And I have an album by the Alan Parsons Project called Tales of Mystery and Imagination by Edgar Allan Poe. And the second song on it is The Raven, and it's a paraphrasing of the poem squeezed into a 4-minute song. And it's quite good. It's just one of those poems. And then there's the Simpson version of it in Treehouse of Horrors, where it's read by James Earl Jones. And it's just good. And except instead of saying nevermore, the Raven, who is played by Bart Simpson, says, "Eat my shots." And Homer goes off crazy. But it's just funny. It's another side story to this is we had a black dog, Labrador cross. Beautiful dog, good temper, thick as 2 short planks. But we named Poe. And everybody who came to the house would get, Poe would jump on them. And she wasn't a small, well, in the end she wasn't a small dog, but she would jump on him and tongue out, typical dog. And we go, "Oh, what's the dog's name, Kev?" And I'd say, "Well, it's Poe." And they go, "Oh, after Edgar Allan Poe." And I'd go, "No, after Poe the Teletubby." And that was true. Our son at the time was still young enough to watch Teletubbies. He decided to name it Poe, and so we did. And that was the confusion over her name. I wanted to do something different this year, and I managed to rope Granddaughter Supreme, otherwise known as Tasman, into it. I bought a skull knocker for the door, and I had this dark purple cape with a hood, and I got her to wear that, and she walks up the driveway and she knocks on the door, and I plan to put out, well, I've titled it The Raven. I didn't title it The Raven, I titled it While I Nodded Nearly Napping, Suddenly There Came a Tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. So that's what she's doing. She's walking up and she's rapping on the chamber door, and she looks like Raven from Teen Titans, but you can't see her face. But she's got this long blue cloak on. So I did that, and it didn't work out too bad. It was good. She couldn't stop laughing. That was funny, but it's not supposed to be a proper version of the Raven. It's just a little bit of fun.
Once, upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary, over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. Only this and nothing more.